Hi there! Before we get started, a friendly reminder. The information discussed on this podcast is for entertainment and informational purposes only. While our guests are knowledgeable in their respective fields, your personal situation may require unique guidance. We encourage you to consult with a qualified professional for personalized advice. Now enjoy the episode. Welcome to today's episode of AndWon Should Know, where we're addressing everything under the sun about hair. And our guest today is Dr. Harold Ma, a hair transplant specialist.
I can tell you how I know him. I sent my husband to him. So now all of Singapore knows what happened to Pia Peng's head.
Hi, I'm Dr. Harold Ma, and thanks for having me on your show, Andrea. It's always a pleasure to see you. How I got into hair was quite a bit of a serendipity. I was attending a conference in Europe, and because I had read the map wrongly, I ended up in the wrong lecture. This lecture hall was literally only attended by 2 or 3 other doctors. And I thought, oh man, what kind of a boring lecture this is going to turn out to be? But lo and behold, I stayed on and I realized that there's something that was very interesting to me. It was a talk on hair restoration surgery. And after listening to that, I was blown away by the technology and the procedure, and I've never looked back. I was totally determined to bring this little known procedure back to Asia, to Singapore in particular, and try and help patients suffering from hair loss. Everyone was talking about lasers and Botox and all that. And I thought, hey, this is very interesting. And I think there's probably a lot of people who could benefit from this. It was quite a lonesome journey because, as you can imagine, there's only 2 or 3 people attending, means not much interest.
Yeah,
and that also means that not many doctors will be performing it. And so I was very lucky, or you say a bit of a curse, that I brought this kind of knowledge back. So I was determined to learn it and learn it well. I felt there's often too many of such treatments that really didn't work. And if you look at advertisements, sometimes you see that, before and after, it seems to look different, but it's just some trickery of lighting, combing the hair a little bit differently, and suddenly the after photo, the guy's all smiles, but not much to show,
Can you tell us a little bit about what goes into a hair transplant? Like, how does it work? Is there downtime? Is it painful? Because I know a lot of people are probably have questions, but it's such a taboo subject that people sometimes don't want to ask. So perhaps you could address that.
A hair transplant is a team effort. It's not just me. And that's the beauty of it. So it's in the old simple sense of the word, we are taking hair from the most healthy and bountiful region and redistributing it into the thinning or empty areas. So from the hairy area into the thinning area. And that's the simplicity of it. So once you do that, you add to the gaps, you expect to have a fuller result. And that's how a hair transplant works.
And do you find, because our show really is about women and women in their 40s and up who are going through peri and menopause, do you find that you are having more women coming to you with hair loss issues?
Absolutely. So I see a distinct group of clients who are approaching the mid-40s where they are starting to have some perimenopausal symptoms going into the early 50s when they are starting to grapple with menopause. And I see this group of patients who, in terms of hair, seems to really fall off a cliff where they say that one moment I was prom queen and now, things are changing right before my eyes. I see it. Maybe people around me don't realize it yet. I can still mask it and all that, but for sure I can tell that my hair is different and I don't like what I see in the mirror. I see an older version, a more tired version of myself. And in the right group of clients, yes, a hair transplant may be applicable as well.
Yes.
Absolutely.
So there's a lot of success rates when it comes to women and hair transplants.
I would say that the women still form a more niche group of my clientele simply because a transplant is, after all, a surgical procedure. So there's a little bit more in terms of the psyche, in terms of going for the transplant. But increasingly, I would say that more and more ladies are getting to know about our work. And as a result, over the years, we are treating clients in the female category who are having hair loss. Just last week, it was quite an interesting day in my work. This lady, you know who you are, she allowed me to shave her hair fully.
Oh.
And she's so cool about it because most ladies would be very averse to shaving their hair. It's going to be months and months of, I think, getting questions, looking very different. Some will have to consider putting on a wig and all that. But And for that reason, we don't shave the recipient area in the lady. But this lady last week, she saw her cousin's good results, a male, no less. But she was very inspired to want to benefit from it. And she said, Doc, I know it's going to make it easier for you. I allow you to shave it. I mean, I nearly fell off my chair because I thought, wow, this lady is very, very accommodating to our needs.
And very brave to a large extent.
Very brave. She joked that she's going to have a Halloween party costume right away. She doesn't even need to think of what to wear. So that's a very cool, you know who you are. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, right.
Wow.
Yeah, so
Okay.
it's
So
refreshing.
after how many months would she be able to see new hair grow?
So a transplant involves taking hair from the healthy part and planting them very short into the recipient areas. After a month or so, a lot of the new hair is expected to fall out. So we go into this, what we call the winter phase. The internet likes to call it the ugly duckling phase for obvious reasons. So there'll be this area where this phase where it looks a little bit thinner than after the transplant. And the real hair starts growing from about the 3 to the 4th month onwards. So that's when we always say that the spring is arriving, the spring of the transplant. And then 6 to 9 months later, you're into full summer. That's when the hair has grown quite nicely.
Do we know why more women are losing their hair, especially when they go into peri and menopause?
It's quite a complex, manifestation or phenomenon. I think as we go into the menopausal stage, the hormones are changing. Essentially, I think there's a stark drop in estrogen levels. And with that, a lot of other problems, skin changes, mood changes, weight gain, and the hair is also not spared. The hair count decreases and each hair becomes a bit more brittle, frizzy, the texture changes, so it's no longer as luscious and well-oiled as before. So all these things means, a thinner, more aged-looking scalp.
What about if a woman comes in and they're at perimenopause and they do experience thinning hair? Is it possible for them to start already asking about hair transplant at that point as something, in a way, preventative, if you will?
That's a very good question. When a client first presents with some concerns about hair loss, they don't really know what they want or what their options are. So we'll always, in the medical setting, take a proper history and want to try and understand how her hair story has evolved. So when it started, some clients tell me since my teens, I've always battled with very fine hair. I've always had very thin hair and it's just got worse over the years with each pregnancy, etc. And worse now, they're approaching their 40s and 50s. So first of all, we will have to take a proper history and diagnose the problem properly. And that also involves doing some laboratory investigations just to make sure that their biochemistry is sort of normal, that there's no, for example, an anemia that's been undiagnosed or a thyroid issue, because these can also impact on hair growth and hair loss. And at the same time, we also evaluate their nutritional status. So we specifically look at things like vitamin D, serum zinc, the iron levels, and even vitamin B12. So for your listeners out there, if they ever have some problems, they can speak to their GP and maybe get these initial tests done just to rule out any treatable causes, which I think the primary physician probably can handle.
Okay.
Yeah.
And is everyone a good candidate? Is every woman a good candidate? Or are there some women that, no matter what, you're going to have to tell them, I'm sorry, but I can't help you?
Yes. So you're right. In the vast majority of patients who present early enough, if they have reasonable spaces in their scalp, in order for us to plant hair safely, I always tell my patients it's a bit like looking for a parking lot when you go shopping. You got a nice big car and you're trying to find a parking lot. You have to back into the suitable space. You can't just back your Rolls Royce into a space meant for a motorbike. Or you risk damaging everybody else next to you, right?
Yes.
So that's the analogy. So with a scope, we're able to delineate whether there's enough gaps for the client to have a hair transplant safely. So that's the primary criterion. Secondly, we also have to make sure that they have enough donor hair. So where the bank of hair we're going to get from, we hope that we can get a meaningful number that's going to address the needs properly. And that's where experience and some of our protocols come in. So to answer your question, not everybody is suitable, but a large number of our clients will be suitable for the hair transplant.
Is there any shampoo or conditioner that, are because I know I've been reading lately that there are a lot of sulfates, phthalates, and that sort of thing, which can actually quicken the pace of hair loss in not just women, in men and women. But is there something that you would recommend to say, okay, try to find shampoos and conditioners that don't actually contain these ingredients? Yeah.
So back to the point about lifestyle, I think care for your scalp is an important aspect. So in humid Singapore, I think it's good to keep the scalp as oil-free and balanced as possible. With the humid conditions that we face, I think it's good to wash your hair at least every day, if not every other day. And sometimes some of my clients tell me, oh, I'm in an air-conditioned environment all day long, I hardly sweat. Then I think 1 in 3 days would be reasonable. Some ladies are very active, they go to the gym, they do their yoga, and I think after such a sweaty session, it's probably good to rinse off and wash off the excess sweat and sebum that builds up. And at the same time, it would be good to use the appropriate shampoo/conditioner for your scalp type. And onto your question about parabens and sulfates, I think that's a buzzword. More and more, the world is leaning towards moving away from sulfate shampoos because they believe it's quite hard. And there are some very limited studies, not very well proven, that it might actually cause harm to the hair roots from using sulfates, So there's a trend towards trying to go towards sulfate-free shampoo and paraben-free products. So just because it's supposed to be healthier and better for our scalp.
Now, if someone is not ready to do a hair transplant, then can they also come to you?
Andrea, indeed, so not everybody should jump onto a hair transplant bandwagon just because they've read about it. And very often we have to politely tell the client, good news, you don't really need a hair transplant yet, sometimes to their disappointment. But the truth is that leading up to a transplant, there are other things like just basic scalp care. If we find that their scalp is not as optimized despite their own hair washing and care, then sometimes we'll ask patients to come back for our scalp treatments. So we have a couple of, thanks to say that award-winning scalp treatment that we introduce certain hair growth serums, scalp boosters, and at the same time, there's a machine that actually cleanses the scalp, get rid of some of this buildup of debris and dead skin cells and sebum.
Oh, great.
Yeah, I think that's very important when you exfoliate your scalp. Mm-hmm. I've owned a hair salon for, I think, maybe almost, I know almost 18 years. I've had customers spend a lot of money at hair loss centers. Mm-hmm. They keep buying packages and I keep telling them, you can't do this. You need to go and see a hair doctor because scalp care is so important. Yeah. When you keep filling the scalp with other stuff, whether it's broken up herbs and you're just impacting it, right?
Yep. That's right.
But I think when people hear an actual hair doctor, they kind of get scared and intimidated. Now, how do we break that? How do we say it's okay when I'm telling you to go to a hair doctor? It doesn't mean I'm telling you to do a hair transplant, but go and see the proper people so that you can get results, right?
Yes, it's true that I think the medical term has a bit of this phobia that build up in people. But I think nowadays, in this modern day and age, we try to engage our clients with videos on social media, so they kind of get to meet the doctor beforehand and hopefully listen to some of our treatments so they realize we're not such scary, nerdy people. It's going to be like, scared at needles and all that. So hopefully that's one way to educate patients. I think medicine is sometimes misunderstood and we think that it's just all pain and agony. But I think nowadays we're trying to educate clients that apart from the traditional medicated treatments, there are also the non-medicated but still scientifically backed treatments that we're trying to, introduce into our practice.
Yeah. And I think the wonderful thing is that you are able to inculcate, like you said, a diet.
Yep.
If you're not ready for a hair transplant or you're not a suitable candidate, then let's see what your body is lacking. Do you actually try and hook them up with a dietitian, or you pretty much know from their blood work what needs to go into their diet?
Yes. So most of the time from the basic blood chemistry, we are able to at least pick out the more pertinent points about what might be lacking in the patient's nutrition. And we can give some simple basic advice with some supplements to see how they are doing. In some cases, for whatever reason, the levels are not coming up to what we want, we might refer them on to our partner gastroenterologist or a dietitian who may be able to see whether there's any absorptional issues or something that we're just not doing right to get the levels that we want. Yeah, so we do work with some of the other medical colleagues of ours. Yes.
Have you experienced any hair loss issues yourself? I mean, you look like you have a full head of hair.
Thank you so much.
Very nice.
I do believe in walking the talk, and I myself obviously am just an ordinary guy, and hair is an important part. And I think that's also one reason why I felt it so important to want to try and help people, because hair loss is often swept under the carpet. People cover it up. Nobody talks about it. It's a bit taboo. And I think being in this little niche part of medicine is very, very nice for me. I specifically felt some hair loss after I had COVID for the second time. So that was actually at the beginning of this year. Good that you asked, Andrea. For the longest time, people always praise me that I've got great hair and great, your hair doctor is perfect. And then the day when I started shedding and I felt my hair was thinner, every few hours I'll ask people around me, how's my hair? And they're like, look at me weird. Like, why? What's wrong? Because I felt something, even though people around me didn't. And I was using my scope and all that. I did see some changes. And so I quickly tried to run some blood work and start myself on certain scalp treatments. And thankfully, 3 to 6 months on, I think I'm okay again. So I can empathize with the client who is feeling something different.
Especially post-COVID. I've heard a lot of customers as well who have said, oh, goodness, my hair, I'm losing my hair. And this is after COVID, after they've had COVID.
I think whenever we go through some, serious illness, COVID, dengue, or even a very high bout of fever from influenza or something, patients do present with a limited time where they feel that their hair is changing. And of course, they're worried, right? They're not sure what this might lead to. And so it's not uncommon that we see this post-illness shedding from be it stress or the illness itself.
Now, one more thing, and also because Pierre had, a couple of bouts of this happen to him. It was alopecia. I think brought about by stress, I hope. I wasn't the one that was giving him the stress, but yes.
Probably his work.
Let's talk a bit about alopecia and how one can deal with that.
Very often when people say alopecia, they're thinking of alopecia areata. I'm not sure if you're referring to that, whereby you see a coin-shaped empty patch of hair loss. In Chinese, they call it 鬼剃头, and very aptly coined because it's almost as if overnight someone came to shave your hair while you were sleeping.
Yeah.
So they call it 鬼剃头. That's the Taiwanese or Chinese term. And alopecia and areata was made famous by Jada Pinkett Smith,
yes,
as you know, the famous Oscar incident. So we believe that there's an autoimmune response in the body. When you are provoked into a certain level of stress, sometimes your body turns on itself and it starts to attack its own hair follicles. And as a result, you start to lose a patch of that hair almost suddenly. Often it's the hairdresser, the hair salon that picks it up, because sometimes it's hidden under your hair. And when you're cutting hair, you realize that, oh, there's this, bald patch there. So to prevent the fire from getting out of hand, we want to try and treat it early.
Right.
And speaking about duration, sorry to cut you off, I wanted to find out with hair transplants, is there a duration in which they last, or is it something that lasts forever?
So because we are harvesting hair from the healthy, what we call the permanent zone, these hairs are somehow not so much affected by the hair loss happening at the top. And therefore, the general principle is that this hair should be long-lasting. And most clinicians agree that the transplanted hair should last 10 to 15 years. Now, what we cannot control is that you continue losing your original native hair. So back to the analogy where you're parking your car, you park your Rolls Royce into the lot, but the two Rolls Royce next to you may move out in time.
Right.
So what we want is to have your transplanted hair among hair that's stable. And so that's where maintenance comes in, like being your balance with your diet. And there's some medication that may be prescribed if one is, susceptible to further hair loss.
Right.
Yeah. So the transplant is generally taken to be long-lasting / permanent, but it doesn't stop existing hair from thinning.
And then another question. Is there something that people who have had transplants, is there a care or some hygiene methods that you would recommend so that they can have this longevity post-transplant?
That's a good question. So what's the aftercare? I think as long as you lead a sensible lifestyle, not too extreme, like back to where we started, that the lifestyle should be balanced, and you should eat well, and you should care for your hair properly. Make sure that your scalp is always hopefully optimized. So be it with the right shampoo and conditioner. And if needed, we can always, sometimes we invite some patients to come back for regular scalp treatment just because they've got very oily scalp or sensitive scalp. And so when we introduce certain serums, it's trying to rebalance these problems on the scalp. And I always tell patients, hair is so precious, so let's take care of it. Every single hair strand counts.
Right.
Some tell me, I like to pluck out my white hair. Oh, it's a real no to me. I cringe. Don't do that. Yeah. It's a beautiful hair, Andrea. So
okay.
Yeah,
it won't grow. So after a while, it just doesn't grow anymore.
Yeah, if you pluck it often enough, you may damage the follicle, and then it may lead to permanent hair loss. So you heard of people who overpluck their eyebrows?
Yes. Oh, yes. Oh,
And then, so over the years, sometimes they come in with very, very damaged eyebrow, and it's because of overplucking. So it's not only for patients who are losing hair, some who have, let's say, high foreheads. I have a distinct group of clients who are not having hair loss issues, but they just want to optimize their hairline to bring some balance back to their facial proportions. And
what is the ratio?
Yeah.
What is the ratio?
So they want to lower their hairline with a transplant. Yeah. So there was a finger challenge some time back on the internet.
Oh.
And the ideal is probably about 4 fingers breadth from your eyebrow. So all your listeners can just look in the mirror, put their fingers in.
Good. I think I have more than 4.
Andrea's got a very beautiful round forehead. But I will agree that, it's just maybe half a finger shy of what it might be. Textbook definition.
How much hair in a day is normal shedding?
If you Google that question, and I'm sure it's Googled a lot, the experts will say it's between 50 to 100 hair per day. But that's based on 100,000 healthy hair, and provided that you are regenerating that hair through the normal hair cycle.
50 to 100 is
50
okay,
to 100
so don't
is
panic.
supposedly okay. But I always feel that if you are consistently losing 100 hair a day, in 10 days is 1,000, in 100 days is 100,000. So that is a lot if you're not regenerating back. I think for practical purposes, rather than counting your hair all the time, if you see like 10 or 20 when you shower, that's okay. And another 10 or 20 when you're blowing and drying your hair, I think that's okay. 30 to 40, I think is reasonable.
30 to 40.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then, of course, if, they're experiencing clumps that are dropping, then that's
yes.
something that they definitely need to come and see you for.
Absolutely.
Okay.
When you see a phenomenon like that and it's causing you a bit of alarm, don't dismiss it.
Yep.
Seek help early and don't wait till it's too late, Some patients tell me their gauge is to see how often they have to clear their floor trap. So they say, doctor, every 1 week I clear, it's okay. Wow, two days I have to clear, I know I have to call you already. So sometimes they use these little
their
ways of measuring, Yeah, correct. Oh, thank you. Yes. I would love to have a refreshing beverage.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
You're most welcome.
Oh, that's very nice.
So, as somebody who is very pain adverse, Dr. Ma, I have to ask you, is there a lot of pain and a lot of downtime comes with an actual hair transplant?
I think that's the second most often question I get in my practice. Is it painful?
Yeah.
I heard that it might be painful. So the truth is we take great pride in making sure our clients have such a nice experience that they're probably going to tell 2 more friends about it.
Okay,
Right?
wow.
So that's what we like to do. And we put ourselves at the center of the patient's, our fears and all that. We imagine ourselves as the patient, and we've painstakingly over 2 decades tried to refine our protocols. So the truth is, it is done under a local anesthetic. So it's a tiny needle that needs to be injected into the scalp. Most patients tell us they felt that it was reasonable. It's not painless, but it was something tolerable. Some of the coping measures would be obviously a lot of care, a very soothing voice, and someone is always there to pet the patient.
Okay.
And
this
surprisingly, we get a lot of comments about petting. They say, wow, doc, that's the most comfortable, reassuring thing I've ever experienced for a long time and in a long time. And I think that these little small touches go a long way to reassuring the client and being gentle and patient. So all these things have helped. We play some light music. It's a very comfortable memory foam mattress. So the patient already feels very relaxed.
So they're laying down
They're lying down
flat face
facing
front.
down as if they're having a massage. We also give a little bit of light oral sedation, like a Valium, so that they're a little bit more chill.
Right.
And Also, we introduced breathing nitrogen oxide gas, so it's laughing gas.
Oh.
So a lot of patients find that, wow, it's quite nice.
That's
Can I order that tank for my home now? Yeah, so sometimes they want to buy that thing home and say, no, medical use
Yeah,
only. Yeah,
exactly.
quite funny.
And how long does a procedure take generally?
Well, the procedure takes us a whole day's work. So like the Formula One team, we are the pit crew, and in the morning is the harvesting time. There's a lunch break for the client, a bit of toilet break and all that. And then in the afternoon, we plant the grafts. And we finish in the afternoon or the late afternoon. So be prepared to spend a day with us, a relaxing, comfortable day with us. Yes.
It's quite labor intensive.
It's quite labor intensive. So my team comprises about 7 to 8 of us, with me at the helm. I'm the leader of the team. My staff are wonderful, and they're very experienced. They're masters in their craft, and they are also very, very particular about the work that they do. So I enjoy working with them.
Amazing.
That is amazing.
Because, our hair is our crowning glory. You
Yes.
lose your hair, you lose your confidence.
Yes. My heart goes out to the clients who sometimes we have not much answers for, except maybe they may have to end up wearing a wig or something. But I do make it as one of my life's mission to be able to help as many ladies as possible, because I feel that yes, it's so much more important for a lady to feel good about her hair.
Yes. Now, then let's talk a bit about, we're seeing a lot of people going to places like Turkey for hair transplants. What sort of risks do you run into?
With all due respect to some of my Turkish doctors, there are some really good doctors, but they are also drowned out by the very unrelenting marketing that some of these other cheap clinics are trying to sell themselves out to be. And as a result, sometimes the good get mixed in with the bad. It's hard for the patient to discern a good doctor from a not so good doctor. And sometimes they end up with a bit of a cookie cutter result. They come back with one particular look, and it's very telltale that it's been done in a particular place, On the other hand, there's also the issue that this remains a medical procedure, and sometimes things may go wrong, and there may be some, complications like an infection or something. And sometimes the patient, having flown all the way back from Turkey, they find that they are sort of left alone. I've had to deal with some of these cases where patients ran into trouble. They were not given very good support post-op, and as a result had some complications, and we had to sort of pick up the pieces. We didn't really know what the doctors there had done, and we had to sort of figure things out with the patient, sometimes with not so good results. So I guess the cautionary tale, the writing on the wall, is that you just have to be careful which clinic you choose. Do your homework, be sure. Sometimes patients say, actually, at the end, the cost, all that, come out to be about the same because of the flight, the time, the leave I had to take, and a little bit of that stress of being alone. It was not really worth all these so-called savings I thought I could have upfront,
True.
Yeah.
True.
So as I mentioned earlier, I always want to put myself in the patient's shoes. I've done this a few thousand times, but to the patient, it's the first time he's experiencing this. And he can do all the reading and all the research online and all that, but on the day itself, it's nothing like experiencing it yourself. So we always put ourselves in the patient's shoes to know that he's probably very anxious. He's probably a bit frightened. He or she is frightened and feels a bit alone in this. And so we always make it a point that we make client feel very comfortable, at ease, and all the little steps actually goes a long way to helping them feel more comfortable with us and that they're in good hands. Interesting story was a patient who, I think his wife was about to give birth, and he had chosen that time to have the transplant.
Oh my.
So that, he can plan his paternity leave with his wife's maternity leave, I think. But every now and then he'll be checking his phone and like, oh, doc, I hope she doesn't pop today and all that. And I don't know what to do. The procedure will be half done and I have to rush up. But thank goodness, it all turned out well. We were able to complete the procedure and his wife gave birth like 3 or 4 days later.
Oh, nice.
A very happy story.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
So, okay, good.
I was thinking, I know, could you imagine? It's like
Yeah, I know.
in the middle of a
Did the baby
transplant.
pop suddenly?
I know.
Yeah.
I think we should move on to some myth,
Yes.
right? Now, tell us. Does wearing a cap make someone bald? Can it lead to baldness if you wear a cap
Yes.
every day?
Good question. A lot of clients do ask me that. I don't believe there's any scientific evidence that shows wearing a cap is going to lead directly to hair loss. But it's also down to the type of cap that you wear, the material. If you're wearing a cap and it causes a bit of irritation or itching, or it traps a lot of heat and moisture beneath that material, and there's no ventilation, I think logic tells us that it's probably not so good for our scalp. So do make sure to ventilate your hair every now and then. I think every half an hour, 45 minutes, it might be good to air it a little bit. Or choose caps that breathe, that are more cottony in material or have a lot of holes so that you can, perforation, right? Correct. And make sure it's well fitting so it's not constricting your scalp all the time.
Does blow drying one's hair cause hair loss?
Blow drying entails heat, right? So be it with tongs or some other thing, it depends on the amount of heat that you're applying and the way you do it. So there is a correlation between drying with heat often that may lead to damage to your cuticles. And so if you have a hairdryer that has a cold and hot mode, then I think it's good to toggle and keep moving rather than being too concentrated and you risk damaging the follicles and leading it to breakage and even changing the hair texture. So I think hair drying in itself is not a problem. And I always advocate that clients, especially ladies, shouldn't go to bed with a wet head of hair because you can then, grow mold and fungus and all that. But that's a different topic. But in terms of drying hair, I think it's good to dry it sensibly and don't use equipment that's too hot that might damage your cuticles.
What about dyeing hair? Is that something that causes one to lose hair as well? Because, ladies love to go for some color. So I think personally, I would like to know if that's something that would cause me to have hair loss because I like to go get my color topped up.
I would classify hair coloring into two functions. One is merely to cover up the grey roots that we all will have to deal with going to our late 30s. And I think it's not wrong to want to cover up to feel a bit better or look a bit younger and fresher. So if you're doing that to cover up your roots, I would say reasonably is 6 to 8 weekly. I think it's okay. Again, it's down to the type of hair dye that you use. Make sure you use a good quality hair dye. And we're guided by the fact that it should not cause irritation or burning sensation or itching afterwards. I think hair coloring itself is not bad. It's not going to cause hair loss. I do color my hair as well. But it's how you do it and how often it's in what context.
Does washing your hair with warm or hot water cause hair loss?
Not in the extremes. I think anything up to about 40 degrees is considered, reasonable. Some people like it really hot and it's almost scalding to me, but they find that it's very comforting. So I think it's about finding your preference. But for that period where you're washing your hair, as long as it's not scaldingly hot to your scalp, it should not harm your hair.
Would cool water be better though for hair wash?
There's some studies advocate that cold hair seems to promote a slightly healthier scalp condition, but I don't think there's very strong evidence either way. The take-home point is you got to be comfortable in your shower. You want to be relaxed. It's your sanctuary. It's a time where you are finding some rejuvenation, right, in that private moment. So do what makes you comfortable, but I think avoid the extremes. You don't have to be in an ice bath. You don't have to be in a scalding hot kind of situation.
Got it. What about genetics? Does genetics play into hair loss? Because, the old wives' tale is that usually I think you have to look towards your mom. Yeah.
Good question. Let's not blame it on our mothers. To all mothers out there. But I would say that the truth is genetics play a big role in how we're going to be. Our personality, our hair type, how we age, everything, But then again, it's probably not only the mother's side, because a lot of patients say, look to your mom's side for clues. But then again, you have siblings, you have brothers, you have sisters who have different outcomes in their hair. The take-home point is hair loss is probably polygenic, meaning that the more family members are affected, then the more likely you are going to be that way. And sometimes you bear a very close resemblance to one of the parent, and unfortunately your hair may not be spared either. But there are always exceptions. Some patients say, I look like my mom, but I've got my dad's hair, and I'm the only sibling who's got the worst hair out of my 7 siblings. So sometimes I think there's definitely a role in genetics, and we don't understand it fully. And it's also probably a lot to do with our lifestyle, stress levels, nutrition, rest, and all that. So it's very complicated, not as easy to put it down to one person to blame. But certainly, all these things will add up to a little, totality, right, of how we are.
Okay, now what can women in their peri and menopausal years take? Supplements and can they take supplements so that it'll help with their hair growth?
So I think it's always good to fall back to the laboratory findings to make sure that we're not missing out something, that we've not overlooked some diagnosis that needs to be treated more quickly. And nutritionally, we want to be guided by science rather than just blindly popping remedies from the internet. So it's good to try and get yourself analyzed and tested, be it with a blood test or even with a hair scope. And then generically, I'll say that have a good lifestyle, try to lower stress levels, get plenty of rest. Some people will say taking biotin does help to a certain degree. I think the caveat is only if you are low on biotin. The studies picked out a cohort of patients who were deficient in biotin, and they found that when they restored the biotin levels, they did see improvement in hair count. But that's not to say that everyone who takes biotin is going to benefit for that reason. So we need to be guided by some of the science, And on the other hand, a good shampoo, good conditioner will probably go a long way to ensuring your scalp is optimized.
One more myth. If you are a smoker, will a hair transplant be a success?
So I have patients who are smokers, and we always encourage them leading up to the procedure, at least a week before, they should cut down or even stop their smoking. And also for a week or two after the transplant procedure. We believe that smoking lowers the blood oxygen concentration level, and that is important for wound healing. So we want to make sure that the blood oxygen concentration is optimized so that it's not going to affect the wound healing and therefore affect the hair transplant outcome.
I think it's a good wrap up as well. Dr. Harold Ma, we're so glad to have you with us today.
Such a pleasure.
Because to our audience, it's all about you knowing and us giving you all the answers. So if you've got anything that you'd like to know about hair transplants, drop us a line in the caption and let us know what you'd like to find out.